program will begin shortly. Launch sequence. Activate. Warning, the following content is not politically correct. Viewer discretion is advised.
All right, welcome back to the channel today, everyone. So today, special guest is the keeper of the list of people who need their phones taken away, Siraj Hashim. What's going on, Siraj? Welcome.
Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. You know, the Habibis are never going to let you forget that you butchered my last name, but it's okay.
I know.
All good. It's all good. You know, first time pronouncing it. You got the first name right, though. I'll give you that.
Yeah.
But great to be on. It's nice to finally be on someone's live stream who shares the same initials as me. SH.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that. What's your middle initial though?
It's A. Do you have A?
Oh, no, I got a J. I know. So when I saw it when you guys were talking about me on your show when Eliza was on, she had mentioned, or Jay was saying, because I don't have an H on the end of my name, I'm not crazy, right? But you mentioned I have an H at the beginning of my first.
Yeah, so I
name.
combined the two.
But the thing about that is, that's why I use the J. I use the J on a lot of stuff.
So, funny story. My gym teacher back in high school mispronounced my first name as Sara, and so ever since that. And every time I tell that story, like my friends from college, they just call me Sara. And so it's just Sara. I don't know what else to say.
That makes sense. And there we go. Okay, so well, first of all, I mean, aren't the Habibis going to be mad that you don't have Earn in the shot?
I mean, I can go grab him right now, but that can.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
I mean, they'll always be mad when Ernie's not in the chat.
Yeah,
and he's not in my lap. In fact, the only draw right now, and I've gotten messages about this, is that I really only follow you for my dog. For my dog. So, I mean, you got people in the chat right now saying Ern is the only reason I was here.
Yeah. Well. Oh, and there's Eliza. So,
there she is. There she is.
So let's talk about the list for a second, because I think it's really interesting. I think you're doing a great public service. I mean,
I appreciate it,
because the list absolutely comes for everybody. So you want to just explain what the list is and how you came up with the idea for it?
Oh man. So the list is now 2 years old, which is wild even thinking about it. Now, can I curse on here?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. It all started from a shit post. Okay. And that is just something I do on Twitter. And basically what happened was, this is in the December of 2019 during the first Trump impeachment saga. So the House was looking to impeach President Trump at the time, and it all stemmed from this Trump whistleblower call, or this Trump Ukraine call, who's on the phone with Vladimir Zelensky. And it was all the discussion about Joe Biden. Joe Biden at the time obviously was running for president, and Kellyanne Conway, former White House senior advisor. This all feels like ancient history, but like that's 2 years ago. This feels like it feels like a decade to us because of COVID.
Yeah.
But basically, what happened was, it was Kellyanne Conway tweeting out something along the lines about how Joe Biden, basically his brain has turned into mush, and her entire caption on her tweet was, "We need Ukraine's help to beat this guy." And then George Conway, who is Kellyanne's husband, who is the co-founder of the Lincoln Project, quote tweeted her saying, "Your boss apparently thought so." To which I said, hold the phone right there. Hold the fuck up. You don't dunk on your wife like that publicly. You just don't do that. And I don't know what their dynamic is, but I was like, buddy, you got to give me your phones. I just, created a random like 5-person power ranking. George Conway was at the top. He's the number 1. I had Donald Trump at number 2. I think Charlie Kirk at number 3. Seth Mandel, who is he was one of my colleagues at the Washington Examiner when I was still there. Good guy. And then I was at number 5. I was actually on the list for the very first month every day. And then as it went along, it's, started off as one random post. I was like, all right, I'll keep it going on the next day. And then the next day. And then people started adding more input. I had one of my friends, Jason Russell, saying, add them, you cowards. I was like, okay, I'll start adding them. Because the very first one, I didn't add any of them. And then the next suggestion came from someone saying, expand from 5 to 10. And I was like, all right, we'll do 5 to 10. And I'll just like keep it in order. And then I'll include, the arrows of where they were the last day. And then, of course, as COVID hit, everybody went insane. And I couldn't keep up with doing it every single day and maintain a full job as a commentary video editor and writer at the Washington Examiner. And I left there in March. So I'm now just completely doing the list in the Habibi Power Hour.
Yep.
Now, I had to switch from daily to weekly. And so while I'm doing the list stream tonight, the list never sleeps. The list is like, always on Twitter. And I got help from people. It's crazy. It's like built up a community of people who just like to point and make fun of tweets. And in all honesty, Sarah, I realized that the whole point of it is to just laugh and mock people's tweets of the people.
That's true.
Specifically the people who don't think they can be made fun of. And that is like severely, it undermines their authority. And I think I never really thought about this until somebody kind of illuminated this for me. But the only way you really kind of push back against authority is by mocking them because they hate being made fun of.
Yeah. I've heard it gone all the way to the Emperor Without His Clothes, right?
Right. Yeah.
That's where it started way back then, and now it's still relevant today because it gets the point across.
Yeah, but what's funny is that during the days of Trump, people would say that the emperor has no clothes and just doesn't care. Trump was one of those people who really they use based obviously as a term to describe people on the right. But before that, it was people who just didn't care what anybody thought about them. Yeah. Trump had that. He walked an interesting balance of caring about what some people said about him, particularly the elite, but then also not caring about what anybody else thought about him. It was a very interesting balance to walk. I don't know how he did that.
Yeah. And it played very well for him because that's what people liked. He was real in a lot of ways. And I think that came across with his times as a celebrity. He didn't care what the media thought of him then either. So you're right. He was very good at
just, but he did and didn't. I think it almost was I don't know if he feigned concern or feigned caring about what the media said about him in order to illustrate a larger point about how corrupt the corporate media is. That's something I think I've seen him do, where it's he blames victimhood culture, but also plays a victim at sometimes. It's kind of genius marketing.
That's what's really interesting. But what I started noticing, especially probably year 2 of his presidency, was that he would say something on Twitter or get the media all riled up about something that he said, and then he would get something done that conservatives didn't like behind the scenes.
Like what?
Let me see. I would have to look back. But there was plenty of times where I don't even remember. Was it
the tariffs? Was it tariffs? There was something I remember.
There was tariffs and stuff
really hated.
Tariffs, stuff like that. There was a lot of those different types of things that he was kind of doing, half-assed, and conservatives wouldn't normally be for these types of things, and so he just you could tell, like, when the media started getting outraged over a tweet, he went after somebody here, he went after that. He was getting stuff done behind the scenes, which
Yeah, it was almost like a smoke screen.
Yeah. So it was like they were playing a game together, like they knew, or they were just taking his bait because he knew he needed to get something out there so that he could have diversion tactics over here while he was doing something else.
Yeah, I could see that. And I noticed that quite a bit during the Trump era, is that he specifically sent out a tweet knowing how the corporate media and his detractors would react, because he's got detractors on both sides. I would actually argue that the neocon establishment Republican base hates Trump more than the left, because he took their party from them and in many ways did their job better than they did. In fact, there are a lot of people who would argue that, by people making that connection between Trump and Reagan, you can imagine how fucking pissed Republicans were to hear that.
Yeah. And I mean, I know, I mean, my family, I grew up in a conservative family, and it was like, everybody I knew, it was like, Trump's not a conservative. What are we doing? But I'm going to vote for him and I like his energy. I like what he's saying. If he gets half this done, then I'll be happy with it. Right. Yeah. I was happy with what he did with the Supreme Court. And that was the only reason why I was probably happy that Hillary lost, was because of the Supreme Court. And I think it's a good thing.
Look, going back on it, I'm very open about this. Like, I was a big lib. Even in 2016, I voted for Hillary over Trump. And it was one of those things where the only reason I did it was because I just started working at the Examiner. I thought to myself, well, what could I do? Could I, defend Trump and his policies? I don't know if I could do that. Can I attack Hillary every day? I was like, yes, I can. And then I was like, there we go. It was like, that's actually, I wasn't really thinking at the time about like sort of the grander scheme, but there's actually like a professional loser class that exists solely they vote against their own self-interest in a way, like they vote against the interests of the country in order to promote their own self-interest. And I was like, 28, 29 at the time, during the 2016 election, not fully realizing the ramifications of, and now again, I was voting kind of a safe blue state of Virginia. I mean, that really didn't matter. And I knew, in 2020, I knew my vote didn't matter. So I just wrote in. So I tried to be as objective as I possibly can, but also make it clear that I am very much a biased commentator on politics. So my views are not driven by a person, but driven by sort of like a central ethos. So I've had 2021 has been a very strange year. I'm sure you can imagine, even stranger than 2020. And I've been obviously on a personal journey, but the journey I've been on politically has been sort of wandering the wilderness, figuring out exactly what it is that I really value in not just my life, but for everyone's lives. And when you boil it, my political ideology and ethos down to like a central point, it's that I'm pro-liberty. And that helps define everything. If the government does something that infringes people's liberties, I'm against it. If it helps expand their liberties, I'm usually for it. But of course, we live in a very gray world. It's not like the government does something straight up and like it gives more people freedom. They never do something like that.
No, the government, and this is where I've been to, is the government never does anything that's in the best interest of the people ever.
Yeah.
I mean, my personal journey was basically one where I went from being a Tea Party conservative to, and the only thing that really, and that's what kind of turned me off to the two-party system in and of itself, is that when we got these people elected, they didn't do anything that we wanted them to do.
People forget Marco Rubio. People forget Marco Rubio rode on the Tea Party conservative way.
Ted Cruz.
Well, Ted Cruz was Ted Cruz and Rand Paul they're interesting because I feel like they've stayed more true to the Tea Party conservative ideology than virtually anyone else.
Other than when Trump was in office, I would agree with you. Ted Cruz,
Yeah,
when
well,
Trump was
yeah,
in
that's the
office,
thing is like Trump blew the lid off of the Republican Party. Like he basically exposed the rot that existed in the two-party system. So like we gotta have that to think. And Eliza is gonna she's gonna be like, yes, like I'm gonna take credit for this, but she put me on to a lot more of Michael Malice's stuff, and I'm just like listening to like sort of the ideology about anarchy and anarcho-capitalism. And there's just one thing that like I can't get past, and that's probably something that I don't know if you really thought about, and I don't know if you identify as as ANCAP or as an anarchist. I just assume because you're friends with Eliza, who is ANCAP, that she might have tried to indoctrinate
I'm leaning there.
You're leaning there. So one of the things that and then maybe you could help explain this for me, is that sure, the state sucks, and I can agree with all the I can agree with a lot of the ANCAP and anarchists' identification of a lot of the problems with the state. Where I start to lose me is that, and maybe this is just Malice's interpretation of it. I gotta talk to him about it. Is that the Constitution by design made the state this way? It's not that the Constitution is separate in theory, like on paper versus in practice. You get what I'm saying? Like
I know what you're saying.
It's man who's corrupt. The Constitution was a framework for man to follow, and it was man who fucked up, i.e., government. So I don't know. Maybe I don't know what your views are on this.
I think that it was an imperfect document that it allowed it had the cracks in it that could be used to grow government, i.e., how amendments are made and stuff like that. I think a lot of people where I come from we are constitutionalists, first through 15. After 15, there's not really much in there that we should have even been looking at, because they actually changed the Constitution to outlaw like alcohol and stuff like that. And there was plenty of amendments that didn't go through. But just the amendment process and how we, changed the Constitution, it was imperfect in and of itself. The only thing that I know, and maybe there's some stuff in the Anti-Federalist documents and stuff like that.
There are Anti-Federalist documents?
Oh yeah.
I'm just scratching the surface here.
So, but like when you really start to read some of the stuff, like and progressives want to just throw this out there with how imperfect the Constitution is because of like slavery and everything at the time. When Thomas Jefferson specifically wrote the Constitution in a way to abolish slavery, he knew it was going to happen by ending trade overseas of people, and so he was able to weed that out, and it just took, it was on its way down from the very beginning of the system. So that's just one of the areas. Now, I would probably get rid of it as well. As Eliza said, she would just abolish the Constitution in the chat. Because where I lie, and my only, I'm a minarchist. So
okay.
So the only difference between a minarchist, or so minarchy and anarchy, is the only thing that the state would provide is basically a military to protect our borders, not to go fight in foreign wars, but to protect our borders. Because what I can't get past is how we wouldn't live in Afghanistan all the time with countries wanting to invade us if we were living in ANCAP land. So that's the only other thing. We also have, it would also be kind of a court system where you could go and basically, if you have violations, it would almost be like just more of an intermediary between, you and people to work out, whatever system, whatever violation they did against you and your property. But everything's based off private property rights.
Right. Yeah, I get that. I guess maybe what my hang up is that for some reason the solution of completely getting rid of the state is, you know how like in sports teams they talk about like blowing up the roster and starting from scratch. Like that seems to be like the anarchist mentality, which, you know, sometimes is good, but even if you blow up the roster, you still have the system in place. So maybe it's just like there are things about our system that have been corrupted by have been abused or bastardized by a corrupt judiciary, by a corrupt legislative branch, and corrupt administrative/executive branch that only try to reclaim more power. So I don't know how you resolve that, but I don't know. Maybe we need to start from scratch.
Amanda actually makes a good point, right? So if private companies can figure out rocket science and go into space, we can probably figure everything else out. The issue right now, a lot of it is government subsidies to private industry. And so they're going to do the bidding of the government. If we got rid of subsidies, then a lot of that could even be changed.
But I mean, like, besides like we the people, like who would really advocate for that with actual power?
That is what's hard. And this is something that where the Constitution, and I have to go back and relook at stuff. I also believe that Thomas Jefferson wrote about not allowing political parties because the political system in and of itself is designed to be this. It's designed and it created this system of two parties that can't do anything. Now, if we could get a third party out there, which I am a member of the Libertarian Party, then it would start to balance things out a little bit more. And I mean, we won't even get down to, you know, constitutionalism by the time, you know, if we got everything we wanted, it would probably be impossible by the time I died to even get constitutionalism. But if we can get to that point, then we can start working on the more minutiae details of anarchy versus menarchy versus classically liberal type stuff.
Man, I'm like entering a whole new world. I just never really even thought possible.
So this kind of in this conversation kind of goes into what we're seeing right now. I mean, the whole stuff with Joe Manchin out there, right? Because it's being framed as a way that it's one senator and not 51 senators that's derailing this process. And it's because they think in terms of parties and not in terms of principles and philosophies.
And the interesting thing about Joe Manchin is that he is one of the few members of Congress, Senate or the House, who actually respects the will of the voter. Now, there was a time when members of Congress and members of the Senate would go to Washington and they would actually vote based on what their constituents, a majority of what their constituents wanted. That doesn't happen anymore. What happens is that these particular individuals, these politicians, go in and vote on what is in their best self-interest, whatever helps them get reelected, what's best for their fundraising numbers, you know, their talking points, you name it. And it completely ignores the will of the people. And, you know, again, those are good problems that those are like things that anarchists, I guess now menarchists, and libertarians correctly identify as something that is a major issue, constitutionalists as well.
Yeah.
It just so happens to be that nobody in Washington actually cares about what voters think. And that this is something that also another thing about that, and what I'm seeing from a lot of people on the left is, you know, this idea about like how, you know, like the idea of birthright citizenship and the right to vote. And this idea kind of festering within the left that we should allow non-citizens to vote. Well, if you allow non-citizens to vote, then obviously you sort of undermine the entire concept of what citizenship means. because if there are benefits that come with being a citizen, why would anyone become an American citizen if you get all the benefits already? You know, why buy the cow and you get the milk for free? It's the exact same concept. And when you see what happens with how they sort of change the conversation, the left changes the conversation, saying, and they frame it in a way that one senator is going against the will of 88 million voters, which, by the way, well, if we're going to talk about like voting numbers, like, okay, we really believe 88 million people voted for Joe Biden. I mean, I'm not going to get on that. I'm not going to get on like a voter conspiracy wave here, but like,
let's not get kicked off YouTube.
Let's not get kicked off YouTube. But like look at, I mean, just look at his fucking poll numbers. It just drives me insane that people still think that this guy's a popular president, let alone president at all. I mean, he's got a bunch of handlers at this point, and it drives me insane to think that Joe Manchin, that people are saying Joe Manchin is the president or Kyrsten Sinema is the president. Which, by the way, Kyrsten Sinema doesn't get nearly enough credit for being president. Probably because everybody's fucking sexist. But
all they talk about is what she. Remember when they talked about like how what she was wearing looked great and all this stuff, and now that she's against them, it's like that's all they comment on is her look.
Her look, It's you know, I feel like nobody's more sexist against women than women.
That is true. But with her, it's interesting as well because again, Joe Manchin, he's a Democrat in West Virginia. Kyrsten Sinema is holding John McCain's spot. Like she won John McCain's seat, so it's a very purple district. I mean, he was a Rhino Republican that was more center. And
people don't talk about how John McCain was like the single vote. I mean, people don't talk enough about John McCain was basically the single vote who stopped the repeal of Obamacare.
Yeah, exactly. They don't care. And that was because he was voting with his district. His district, like I said, it's obviously a very central purple district that if she doesn't vote this way, all the Republicans that voted for her aren't going to vote for her again. So it's one of the reasons why the Senate has become imperfect as well with the system that we have. Like you said, because people get to Washington. People don't spend enough time in their districts. They should, I mean, you know, they don't know their constituents even well enough to understand how they're going to vote. And I see this locally because I'm working with Angela, who's running for District 14, which is Marjorie Taylor Greene's district. And she absolutely, I don't think Marjorie Taylor Greene knows what her constituents actually want because she ran unopposed in the last election. So this time she's being opposed by a libertarian. So we'll see. It should be an interesting election, though.
Is Angela registered as a libertarian?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's just like you got like this is the thing about libertarians, and like this is what Rand Paul did well, is that he ran as a Republican, and like I get it. Some people will be like, some libertarians will probably say, it's a cop out. Like libertarians need to get real. They need actual visible leaders, personalities. As much as it sucks to say it, they need a cult of personality figure. And that's the only way they're going to win elections, because unfortunately, in the democracy that we live in, again, I think about that. There's that one clip of the Islamic imam saying democracy means government of the people, by the people, for the people, but the people are retarded.
Well, it's turned into idiocracy. You're right.
Yeah. So I don't know if you're advising Angela. I just say like, hey, primary Marjorie Taylor Greene, if she wants to have a chance of succeeding.
Well, that's the problem. Well, and I think she has a chance of succeeding if no Democrat runs. If it's a one-on-one race, I think she has a chance.
But the game
when
is rigged against libertarians entirely. Like, name one libertarian who's gotten to the House that like, even Ron Paul, who many people view as like the king of libertarians, was a registered Republican.
Yeah. And that's what people also miss too, because the only libertarian ever elected to the House was Justin Amash, but he switched.
And he was a Republican. And then he also became a big lib. He dropped the Itarian.
Well, and that's he's actually now back out there with Libertarian Party. I met him when I was up in Michigan for their convention. Yeah, I was very disappointed in him and how he got Trump derangement syndrome and basically couldn't get anything done at that point. But I think he's kind of turning a corner too. Right now, Dave Smith and Spike Cohen are kind of the two figureheads of the Libertarian Party.
I've heard a lot about Dave Smith. I don't know him personally. I've never really interacted with him, but everybody tells me good things. And look, if it takes a comedian to change that, turn it around, I welcome it. Yeah.
So I guess look at. I had this to pull up because it kind of actually went back to what we were talking about, and it's obviously list-worthy tweet from Beth Miller. So this is, I mean, it just illustrates what they think of, flyover country and everything, because they want him to vote against, what his part or what his constituents want, and this is what we get. And then it was amazing because she apologized but didn't delete the tweet.
You want me to read it in my Pakistani accent? I could do that.
Oh yeah, you can. Yeah, let's go.
Okay, so Beth Miller, she tweets, "What Joe Manchin, who represents a population smaller than Brooklyn, has done to the rest of America, who wants to move forward, not backward. Like his state is horrible. He sold us out. He wants us all to be just like his state, West Virginia. Poor, illiterate, strung out." So Beth Miller. Look, Beth Miller, another person who got Trump derangement syndrome. I am trying to figure out exactly where she ranks in the top 10 this week. It's one of those things where, the mask comes off, they reveal their true colors, and exactly as you said, this is what they think about flyover country. This is what they think about middle America. In all honesty, though, that's what a lot of people who aren't even part of the elite think about middle America. Real America, because they specifically think that their lived experiences don't matter. And when the backlash you're seeing right now against things like, COVID lockdowns, mask mandates, vaccine mandates, even, sports leagues that are suspending games or canceling them, and the opposition to like critical race theory in schools. Like, there's so many different things. And I had this conversation with my wife the other night as we were driving up to DC, and it dawned on me how big of a deal, sports is to American culture. Like, there's Americans are very social compared to a lot of other cultures. Obviously, humans by nature are very social, but Americans in particular, we're very friendly. We'll take the shirt off our back for you even if you're a complete stranger. Of course, we can be very mean to each other as well. I mean, we have a pretty strong track record of that as well. But we also have a lot of us are very generous by nature. And one of, we live in a melting pot, and everybody lives in sort of different pockets within, say, certain cities, certain suburbs, or even rural areas. And what unites us are things that actually get us physically all into the same space. So you have, say, things like music concerts, festivals, you have sporting venues and events. I mean, literally any single, like county fairs, you name it. That gives people sort of that shared experience that, like, hey, I might be Muslim, And Sarah, you might be trans woman, but we can, if we're both from the same city, we could both share the bond of being like fans of like the Atlanta Braves. I'm a Red Sox fan, and you just happen to live in Georgia. So like, I'm just saying, like, if we were both Red Sox fans, like we can put aside all these differences and just come together. That's what people loved so much about the Olympics, is that the Olympics was a time which you put politics, you put a lot of these things that, that divide us normally, and you come together for the sake of competition and sport, and you have this camaraderie with other people. And it's a beautiful thing you have in America. And I've noticed that in the last 2 years, since COVID and the lockdowns, they specifically do these things to lock everyone down and deprive Americans, who are very social by nature, of being social. Put us in isolation. You take away basically everything that makes American culture what it is, and essentially use it to destroy American culture. You use a public health emergency to destroy American culture. Everybody is now divided. Everybody hates one another and wants to choke each other out over like the stupidest, pettiest arguments. It honestly, you have families who aren't even speaking to each other over dumb bullshit like politics and COVID. Like, that is where we've gone as a society.
And I think that started under Trump, but it's continuing under COVID lockdowns, and it's just getting worse, it seems. And like you were talking about sports, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean,
like the Olympics were made to protest. Like, that would be something that you would never see, protesting your country at the Olympics like that.
Well, it's not. I mean, like, the protesting has been done before, and I think the sort of the injection of politics into sports is specifically designed. I think that was like the first wave. You had the Colin Kaepernick kneeling during the national anthem. Like, maybe not the very first wave, because I remember back. I think I wasn't alive at the time, but you see like records of like the two black track and field athletes who raised the Black Power fist at the the 1970 Olympic Games. True. Somewhere, something, or like it was like 68 games, something like that. And it was, you look back at that time, you think, wow, that was such a brave thing. And you see it happen today, and you're like, what are they doing? These are like, take away the fact that like 50 years ago, athletes, professional athletes and Olympic athletes had like a totally different lifestyle as compared to today. Today they're treated like rock stars. Like, they're intentionally dividing people by injecting politics into a thing that is typically not political. And they're doing it to try to erode the fabric of American culture. Because there are people within the left who specifically hate American culture. They hate America or the idea of America and want to destroy it.
And it's like you said, and a lot of people would look at COVID and think that was by design, how everything happened. And I
more
questioned
every day
on this channel.
Yeah, please go ahead. Sorry, I don't want to cut you.
Oh, so I said I've questioned on this channel before, and I have absolutely no facts about it. But I've told people it would not surprise me one bit if the Chinese government released this virus because they knew that governments would take on this hyper power grab at this time, and it was the easiest way to spread communism throughout the world without going to war.
Well, there
have zero.
There's several theories about this. I mean, it's not like you have zero evidence. I mean, you have Anthony Fauci, who worked with the Wuhan Institute of Virology, who has had emails back and forth with members of that lab. There was discussion about the gain of function research for, the SARS-CoV-2, the coronavirus, a bunch of back coronaviruses. One thing I have to say though, and that is, when they talk about gain of function, that's almost like a misdirection, because what type of function are you trying to gain with these viruses? At that point, you're just weaponizing them. So people really should be saying, They're it's weaponization, not gain of function research, weaponization research.
That's absolutely true. And there was the article. I mean, there's the article, and I have it on my phone still from 2015 that talked about engineering bat viruses with the SARS virus to see if they could get it to become human malleable.
Yeah, like it's almost like all of this was part of the plan, that it was intentional. And the lab leak theory, as you know, more evidence comes out that it actually was it leaked from a lab, then the only question becomes, was it intentional and deliberate, or was it completely by accident? And I don't honestly, I don't think it's I don't think it's the latter. I just don't. If you think about how
Agenda 21 or the Great Reset is very real, and they needed something like this to be able to get you into compliance. And because Hillary wasn't supposed to lose,
right,
they had to speed it up.
Hillary wasn't supposed to lose. Exactly. It was almost like it was a complete, you know, it was revenge for 2016, because the one thing COVID did is that it gave precedent for all of these state and local governments, and even those within the federal government, to lock down the country, plunge the world into a recession, and take away basically the only blue chip that Donald Trump had as president, which was a strong economy. Once he did that, then people, you know, you put people out of work, you put people on, and not only for unemployment benefits, but for just basic, you know, stimmies. You then create a culture where people don't actually want to go back to work. You're seeing it now. There are so many places where they're trying to hire people, but they're not getting any. They're not getting any workers applying, because why would you work if you're getting paid by the government? Like,
exactly. Before I respond, actually, so Eliza, again, thank you. We love you too. And she also said, not like a Fed, so thank you. But you're right. I was up in Michigan back in July, and I mean, restaurants offering $2,000 signing bonuses to waitresses and waiters to come and work for them. I traveled from Nashville to Asheville to Raleigh, North Carolina. Same thing. Everywhere we went, there was a sign: we are short-staffed due to this, this, and this, so please be patient, type stuff. And it's like, you're right. I mean, people don't want to go back to work. It's amazing.
And you know, this latest thing happening with Omicron, you almost see like things happening before they actually do, right? Like, you're starting to see people in some of these major urban hubs like New York City, Washington, D.C., they're all lining up around the block in, you know, 20-degree weather. It's freezing out for hours on end in a line with people to find out if they have COVID or not. Where's the sense in that? If you have COVID, you probably know you have COVID. Like, God.
Yeah. Why? And you're gonna stay outside in the cold, where you're probably gonna get a cold, and then you're gonna feel like you have it. So then you gotta go get tested again, because.
You know, there's that one meme I think of from, I'm trying to remember, it was the New Edition show that they did, you know, the group New Edition, as the guy is like, he's like, I always think of that image, and I think of that, you know, like, you actually can't have COVID if you never test positive for it, or if you never even get tested for it. All these people probably would live in complete, you know, bliss, never knowing they had COVID, because they never got tested for it, because most of them at this point with Omicron are asymptomatic. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing with Omicron, is they can't admit the truth, because that would mean that the the virus is going away because it's getting weaker. It's kind of what we want to happen. They have to lock us down at least and get one more time out of it.
Yeah, one more time. And that do not comply, the slogan motto. Like, I've been fully radicalized by COVID for sure. In fact, every day I become more and more radicalized by it, because I see what's happening, and I recognize, hey, I saw that movie before. They're trying to do the same shit they did, a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
Don't fall for it. Like, it's not like, you have a better chance of dying in a car accident than you do from dying of COVID. Just don't take, like, people are addicted to fear. They're addicted to fear. They're addicted to the state providing their assistance and being like their mommy or daddy, telling them that everything's going to be okay. Like, people just need to wake up. There's so many sheep. It drives me absolutely insane.
Do you think it's coincidence that so many people on Capitol Hill tested positive this week, even though they're vaccinated? And then they all had the same explanation. Thank God I'm vaccinated, because otherwise I'd probably be in the hospital.
At this point, they're making an argument that they're making a strong argument that it's not even worth getting vaccinated if you're just going to get COVID anyway. Yeah. If anything's going to work, it's just, talk to people who get like prophylactic monoclonal antibody therapy, Regeneron.
Yeah.
Like, that shit works. Like, people who've gotten it reduces the chances of you getting COVID or contracting COVID or testing positive for COVID by 77%? It's more 3/4.
Yeah, that seems to be the biggest thing. I know everything's come, there's, what was it last year? I can't remember what the name of it is off the top of my head, but then ivermectin,
hydroxychloroquine.
Yeah, and so these things that they've tried and they've gone through, and it does seem like the whatever antibodies,
monoclonal antibodies, yeah.
Yeah, it seems like that is probably what's the biggest saver when you get COVID. It seems like that's when as soon as you start taking that, it's within like 24 to 48 hours.
Or even just getting exposed to it. Like, if you get exposed to it, you can go get it. And you never test positive. You just think you might have been exposed to it. You go and get it.
Yeah, but how backwards are we? How backwards are we anyways right now, where they supposedly hate corporations, but now the CEO of Pfizer and Moderna are now simply experts on the matter and say that it's going to be 5 more years. Of course you're going to say that.
I mean, there's a vested interest in thinking that for these CEOs of these big pharmaceutical companies, again, this is like every consumer problem that you ever have. You're never going to make the perfect product because there is a financial incentive on part of these companies to increase their profit margins by continuing to have that problem exist. I'm not saying that, for example, like, doctors haven't found a cure to cancer because it keeps oncologists employed. That's not what I'm saying. But there are industries where prolonging the problem helps line their pockets. So completely doing away with the problem will be basically the end of the line of that gravy train for them. And you almost see it right away when it comes to COVID. You have Pfizer, Moderna CEO saying, "Oh, you're going to need a 4th booster. Oh, you might need a 5th booster or a 69th booster." Like, this is the play here. They want people to live in the perpetual state of fear, and they gaslight us into thinking that we're the ones who are insane for pointing out, hey, maybe they're not independent arbiters about COVID and promoting a vaccine because they're the ones who have the most to gain from even if they're free for the people, they're still getting paid billions of dollars in government contracts. Like, this is not like, this is not like rocket science. You could you could look this shit up.
Just look at, I mean, that's one of those things about Anthony Fauci alone, right? We have a virus that we can get a vaccine for within a year.
Yeah.
But Anthony Fauci was the big person in the AIDS dilemma, in the AIDS crisis too, where we can't even we still don't have a cure or a vaccine for AIDS. And it's been how long? And it's just really interesting because now they have this drug that costs, $1,000 a pill to prevent AIDS, but that's about it. So
yeah, it's because really, it's just like the issue with childhood cancer research. There is not a huge financial incentive for a lot of these big pharmaceutical companies to invest in childhood cancer research because there's not a huge return on investment. So unfortunately, that's where,
Have you ever listened to Bo Burnham, the comedian?
I know of him. I haven't really listened to any of his stuff.
So it was actually an off, because he's an off-color comic anyways, but he made it in one of his songs. He said, I think it was Love It. The name of the song is Love Is, so you can go listen to it. But it said, love is being the creator of the company that makes rape whistles, but then not wanting the rate of rape to decline, because even though you started with good intentions, you don't want the rate of rape to decline, because you'll see an equal decline in whistle sales.
Oh my God.
And so that's what it kind of feels like.
Wow, what a dark thing to insert into a comedy special. Holy shit. Man. But yeah, that's kind of where we are as a society, is that like just the financial incentives just far outweigh any like benefit that the product is supposed to bring.
Yeah.
It just, man. Oh, so yeah, that's I'll you know, since you're the host, Sarah, I'm gonna let you pivot on this one.
Okay, so have you seen actually keeping with COVID too, and kind of tying it back to what we talked about earlier with, you know, even going back talking to Marjorie Taylor Greene. So apparently now it's come out that she owns stock in 3 of these different COVID-19 vaccine manufacturers.
Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yeah.
So all right, yeah, no, like look, if you own
like,
stock in these companies as a private citizen, that's perfectly fine. Okay. If you are a elected official, it is most bullshit. It is absolute garbage, Sarah. It is too shitty. You know, the thing is, I think about this all the time, because people think that, like, you know, I almost think like this is like a design ploy to keep the attention on lawmakers, but not bureaucrats like Anthony Fauci, who can actually benefit not from stock options, but can earn more than just a government salary, and he's not limited by any particular restrictions. So like he can make money on, say, book sales, documentary, you name it.
Yeah.
I mean, even stocks. It's just like at this point, it's very unethical, and it's something that both the left and right and people everywhere in between would agree on is unethical and should change. But the lawmakers don't want to do anything to change it, because they're also benefiting from it too. You have Nancy Pelosi, Marjorie Taylor Greene, what was it? Kelly Loeffler, Richard Burr, all of them, you know, dumping Dianne Feinstein, all of them, you know, somehow dumping stock before shit hit the fan in the spring of 2020. Well, Marjorie Taylor Greene, you can't really count on there because she wasn't elected.
There is the Twitter, or they got suspended from Twitter. The
Pelosi,
Nancy Pelosi's
stock tracker,
the portfolio tracker. Yeah. I mean, because it makes sense. You see it all the time, and she's been widely known to be, you know, insider trading. And they know. I mean, that's the thing, is if they were in Congress and they saw this coming, they had time to buy up a lot of stock. And because I mean, they won't get audited because they're not running for president or whatnot.
It also, you know, when those stories broke out, like Richard Burr and Kelly Loeffler, but specifically Richard Burr, and that the idea that they were somehow told in January, in the middle of like a closed door meeting with, say, the president and other Republican lawmakers and even some Democrats, that the stock market's going to tank because of this virus, you need to go ahead and call your financial advisor or your stock broker right now and get your money out of it, because it's going to go down. At that point, why is their first call to their stockbroker, and I don't know, calling a reporter and telling them, holy shit, we have a major crisis on our hands. The people need to know about this, because if our government doesn't do anything about it, you know, hundreds of thousands of people are going to die, and more others are going to, you know, go through a mental health crisis, probably, you know, die by suicide, or basically have their entire development, you know, developmental growth stunted, particularly with kids, and turn everybody basically into insular hermits and destroy American culture as we know it. And this is where I get, I can't put the entire onus on just these lawmakers, but it's just a symptom of a giant problem.
Yep.
This is the time where I get blackpilled and I think, God, there's just nothing that we can do to stop it. But
there is the black pill and the white pill daily switches, because you see something and you hear something. And let me see, we got. All right. So Robbie says, so libertarians and conservatives have a lot of common ground. Let's focus on defeating the crazy and iron out the details later. That's true in a lot of ways. I think what a lot of people fail to realize is there's also a lot of people that come from the left that are libertarians that can't get behind a conservative movement. So there's a lot of conservatives, but a liberal, progressive would say the same thing about libertarians as well.
Yeah, it's tough because when it comes to, there are just certain issues that the left and right would agree on. So say, for example, when you had these vaccine passports being implemented in New York City, you had conservatives and members of Black Lives Matter kind of like locked arms protesting these restaurants or like the city of New York implementing vaccine mandates and vaccine passport mandates because it negatively impacts everyone, not just certain groups. Like, I don't know how we got into this mindset where only Trump supporters are somehow anti-vax.
Yeah,
it's crazy because for the longest time,
they've labeled the definition of anti-vax too is
right. And even if you're skeptical of this particular vaccine, the COVID vaccine, which everybody has a right to be skeptical of. In fact, you should be skeptical of everything the government does. I'm perplexed that the only people who are really, they're trying to create different classes for, you have the vaccinated and unvaccinated, and then you have something happen like this week where every single vaccinated person of some major stature, public presence, public figure is saying they tested positive for COVID and they were double vaxxed and then got the booster. Well, I have yet to get the Rona, knock on wood. I mean, I'm still amazed I still haven't gotten it, but I'm sure there are probably times I've been exposed to it, or maybe I got it and was asymptomatic. I have no idea. But that's the thing is it seems like people who there's a tweet that's going to be making the list this week of an individual who is not even a blue check, not even verified on Twitter, but someone who double masked up, got the face mask, got the the violent the latex gloves, basically fully dressed up like they're going into a chemical hazard zone or biohazard zone, and they're still getting COVID. At this point, if you're all wearing masks and you're still getting COVID, maybe masks don't fucking work.
Or maybe they don't. Just don't know.
Maybe.
Maybe. So I guess we're kind of coming down to the hour, and I know you got to still stream the list tonight, right? So
yeah, I can stay for a couple more minutes though.
Well, I did want to ask you, what was the worst reaction that you ever got for putting somebody on the list? Because you see some good ones.
All right. Well, I've seen some pretty bad. I've seen some pretty big meltdowns, but the biggest meltdown that I've had happened recently, and it happened by someone who was a family friend who decided to burn a bridge with me by doxing. Well, I wouldn't. People will be like, oh, it wasn't truly doxing, but basically exposing my wife for the work that she did on election integrity stuff. And that was with Wajahat Ali. He had by far the biggest meltdown. And I wasn't really, I didn't feel like the world had ended because the information had been out there It was just he drew the connection that I was married to this particular person. I still am married.
Mhm.
We're happily married, and I'm very supportive of her, and I'm very proud of her. I am not a George Conway, which is what people want me to be. Legit. People want me to like go out there and say, my wife is in the wrong. My wife is an evil person, and I need to shame her and disassociate myself with her because what she did is wrong. Like, no, the most democratic thing you could do is investigate. If there aren't people to provide oversight and investigate allegations of voter fraud, we wouldn't have any free and fair elections. I mean, you can make the argument we don't have free and fair elections now. A lot of people say, oh, the game is already rigged. In many ways, it already is. But even if you don't have the people there to challenge these things, to shine a spotlight on, massive, malicious, even malfeasance within our voting system, like then how can people be so sure that we live in a representative democracy or a constitutional republic or basically a free society where every person's vote is counted and it's not diluted because people cheat in elections? And it does happen. People do cheat all the time in elections. I don't know why. I mean, like, we're literally one election removed from the whole Russiagate. Do people do people on the left completely forget that? People forget
they forgot about it. They forgot about Georgia, and they forgot about Georgia in 2018 too.
Right. Yeah, they forgot about Georgia too. It's just, these are things that like that it all comes full circle, and it kind of reaffirms and sort of continues to motivate me to continue to do what I do, because seeing people respond this way almost gives you a sense of like, well, why are you so insecure about it? Why are you making light of this every single time? Like, you're trying to make me feel bad for simply being married to someone who is doing this. Or are you afraid that they're going to find out there was actual wrongdoing? Like, don't you care about the truth? If you cared about the truth, then, people like my wife wouldn't get, the type of shit that she would get, versus like Robert Mueller, who, was basically considered the hero among the left for simply investigating the former president.
Yeah, exactly. So last thing, are you on the list? Actually, how many times have you put yourself on the list?
So for the first month of the list's existence, so that was December 2019, I was on it every single day. So then I held a poll in the beginning of January 2020, and I asked my followers at the time, am I taking up a spot from a more deserving candidate? And they overwhelmingly voted yes. And so what I did from there is that I'm automatically a given on the list. It's like my jersey was retired. It's hanging up in the rafters. And so, like, just by virtue of creating a list of people who need their phones taken away, I myself deserve to be on it because I'm spending so much time making a list of people who need their phones taken away.
I gotcha.
It's very meta.
I think Eliza took your phone a couple weeks ago, right, for making a human trafficking joke.
No, people put me on the list all the time. And yes, I have made some spicy tweets, but almost always, as soon as I do that, I put myself on the list. So
yeah, that makes sense.
But that human trafficking joke was good. It was a good dad joke.
It was very thoughtful. I mean, it was
yeah. it was what it was, and Eliza will definitely think I'm a horrible human being. But then again, so do many other people.
I'm watching in the chat to see her come up, but
she probably got sick of me and left.
And so everybody knows, I'm going to share this dandy of a tweet too, just because you decided to go 30 minutes later than we were supposed to start today. Oh, yeah, be that boomer. This tweet yesterday, what was this?
All right, this is great. Oh man. So all right, you got to read it from Jen Rubin's perspective first, okay? Are you familiar with the rapper Nelly?
Yes, I know the song.
Okay, you know the song. All right. So So Jennifer Rubin tweets out, and wait until the White House leaks whatever doc they have from Manchin's with his name on it. Woo. It's getting hot in here. As soon as I heard that, I was like, oh, shit. I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop myself from completing the chorus. So hot, so take off all your clothes. Like, and because it was Jennifer Rubin, I had to do it.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Like, to give people specifically, like, I almost exist, Sarah. I like one thing that really gives me pure joy, and hopefully this will do it for you too, is watching my followers suffer from reading my tweets.
It does.
Nothing
As I've
brings
started to follow you, it does.
And nothing brings me greater joy than seeing my followers jump in my replies, either trying to put me on the list for a tweet I made, like intentionally, but specifically designed to make them cringe so hard that they're like, oh my God, why do I follow him? It's almost like a daily challenge to get them to unfollow and block me.
That was, and yeah, I saw that one yesterday, and the replies didn't disappoint either. So
no, they don't. They never do. And it's become like just like a running joke after running joke, Sarah, where I just like I do something and everybody thinks the same thing, and it almost always results in like Siraj needs his phone taken away ASAP.
Yeah. Like right now.
Like right
but
now,
all right.
exactly.
So so you are getting ready to go do the list now. You want to plug?
Yeah, I'll be doing it in about an hour. I'm gonna get everything together and just do one quick look at everything from this past week, because it was a real doozy. I was supposed to do it last night.
Getting better. The last 3 weeks have just been, actually last week wasn't too bad. The week before was crazy.
No, last week wasn't too bad. It was economics heavy. A lot on inflation, a lot on Joe Biden, basically raising the debt ceiling, basically opening up another credit card to pay off our debt.
Yeah, exactly.
But hopefully, like, it is always the worst weeks where like the news cycle is just so bad, in which the list is like pure gold because of how bad of a week it is.
Yeah. Yep. This week was particularly bad, I could say. There's a lot going on. So,
there is.
But all right, where can everybody find you at then?
So, I mean, there are a lot of different. Everybody makes fun of me for basically being on every single social media platform. So I'll just leave it at this. You can follow me on Twitter at SirajHashmi, and if you want to just follow the list has a Twitter account too at List Comes For All.
I think I put everything in the description of this as well. I put your link tree on there so they can.
The link tree has everything. It's basically like a giant scroll of every single social media platform I've been on that has existed or ever will exist.
Yeah, and so, but that's smart. Honestly, being on every platform you can think of is really smart. I was at a convention back in August, maybe, where Rob Smith. I'm not sure if you're familiar with who Rob Smith is.
Name sounds familiar.
He's a black gay Republican.
Yes, I'm familiar. Yeah.
And so he said his goal was to be like J-Lo and be everywhere. So that's exactly that sticks. It's perfect. You got to be everywhere. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's come to the point where like for advertising, they have like such an annoying jingle that it gets stuck in your head. And as soon as like you stop thinking, as soon as it stops getting stuck in your head, then you actually think about the product. So weird brain fuck or mind fuck, I should say.
All right. Well, it was a pleasure to have you on. So thank
you so much, Sarah, for having me on. I really appreciate it.
And I know we talked about, and we'll just kind of tell everybody here that I'm going to be on your channel here next week on the Habibi Power Hour.
I don't know if it's going to be next week, but sometime in the new year.
Said after the new year. So.
Yeah, we'll do it after the new year. We're still figuring it out because our schedule is I've been traveling a lot over the last month, and so once things finally settle down on both mine and Jay's end, we're going to start bringing guests back onto the show. So we'll definitely hit you up about that.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm excited to do that. And for everybody else in the chat that's still watching, make sure you guys click the like and subscribe button below, and then go follow me across social media platforms as well. Thanks again, Siraj.
Thank you, Sara.